All of the work was made for the show. Trump had just become president, and in the build-up to the election, there were a lot of slogans that were being used, and one of them was "Make America Great Again," which is something that was disturbing to me, because I don't, first of all, totally understand or align myself with that kind of ideology, and also because it was hearkening to a time where racism, sexism, and xenophobia were very, encouraged, and was a part of kind of a warmongering culture of World War II and prior. So it was this idea that this was something that would be great again was it's not ironic, but it's like terrifying to me. So in some ways, a lot of the work in the show deals with imagery from the 1950s and 60s, kind of this time that I'm personally not from, and I'm not necessarily nostalgic for, because I don't even know what it was like. But I've inherited a lot of the ideals from that time, and it comes through like in secondary generations, like your parents or your grandparents. So it's like, what does it mean to use nostalgic material when you're not necessarily nostalgic for it? When I started to think about the show, I was working with some new materials, which some of the works in the show have resin in them, and that's kind of a different process. I used transparencies and layering, and just a different, instead of cutting things out, there's more of a solid quality to the resin works. They're kind of also jewels or something. They're like trapped in ice. The Sleep Rock, though, the title, there is a kind of poetics to those words, and one being that dreams and sleep are kind of more ephemeral space, a murky space that we're not totally in control of, that kind of happen to us and are vehicles to understand maybe our own psychology or things we're afraid of or that we wish for, and rock being something that is very physically earth grounded, not the opposite, but in conjunction has a polarity to it. And so there's a lot of polarities within the show. I do think of this tree mall and the parking lot as these kind of anchors that are another maybe polarity within the show. The tree mall, it was actually a postcard where they're trying to sell this like idea of public space being corporate, and then the parking lot where there's this big kind of purple flower in the middle at night, it's actually in the bottom of that painting are all of these teenagers that have showed up to do street racing in the parking lot of a mall. So they're also kind of trying to figure out a way to shift what is public in a way, or what is private, and use it to kind of take over that space and maybe own it for themselves in some way. So when I was a kid, my mom loved to go in the middle of the night and dig up flowers that were planted in mall parking lots, and we would throw them into our car and take them home and plant them in our own garden. And so I think I was like indoctrinated into, thinking of ways of liberating oneself from maybe corporate space by that experience. One other thing I would maybe say is there are a number of images throughout the show that are kind of captured from etiquette movies. In the US, in the 1950s, there was a real a creation of like a teenage market, and in doing so, there was also this fear of rebellion and fear of like the juvenile delinquent. And I think that these etiquette movies really taught teenagers that to be different, or to be like, outside of society, that you were like eating a bottle and cutting your lip with glass and doing all these like really insane things. It's important to rebel. It's just that I guess at this moment, in relation to Make America Great Again, I question like, how do we rebel against this? For myself, I feel like one of the ways isn't necessarily to self-destruct, but is to create, to grow, to build things, to kind of imagine another space that you could exist in. And there are little moments where I'm trying to celebrate the creator, I guess. And it's not necessarily religious, but it does feel transcending to be able to, in the face of a culture that's very death-orientated, war-orientated, it is important to remain someone who wants peace or wants to be making life important. And I think artists can do that. They don't always do that, but it is a possibility. And I think that that's like a political thing, you know?